And if all the speakers, I mean the distinguished scholars here in the dais with me, if they follow the self-discipline, then I will appreciate it more. And I think we'll start with the session right now. And I request Professor Mohd.Sanaulla, Department of Arabic, Aligarh Muslim University, for Yoga in Islam. Dr. Sanaullah.
Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Nahmaduhu wa nusalli ala rasulihil kareem. Amma ba'd. Respected chairperson, dignitaries on the dais, off the dais, ladies and gentlemen. Well, I'm supposed to talk on certain aspects of yoga and Islam, or yoga in Islam, in a time frame that has been fixed benevolently as 8 minutes. Well, talking about Islam is a high-risk job, given the modern times, its challenges. Because Islam has often been misinterpreted, misunderstood, and vehemently misinterpreted and misunderstood. Someone has taken Islam as a tool of negative thought and negative action that has led to a devastating scenario that is visible, quite visible globally. So, on the other hand, we find that I find that Islam is not which had been projected by the other peoples. To project this picture very clearly, I'll be just showing you some slides. But before that, I'll be giving an outline of the academic and philosophical aspect of this deliberation. Because when we are talking about yoga in Islam, we are basically talking about a vision of philosophy that is enshrined in yoga. And yoga that combines between subject and object, that is basically subject-object unification, shunning all the dichotomy between subject and object, between me and us, between what is inner and what is outer, between what is matter and what is non-matter or extra-matter. And when it is represented epistemologically and theologically in terms which have been coined in different phases of history by so many quarters who fought each other ideologically and politically. So in this background, we can gauge the sensitivity of the topic itself. What is the plight of the modern man? The plight of modern man, if I am to sum it up, it is that the modern man has conquered mysteries of the universe as it has been projected by a poet. That is, when he says, ढूंढने वाले सितारों की गुजरगाहों का अपने अफकार की दुनिया में सफर कर न सका. What is the plight of modern man? जिसने सूरज की शुआओं को गिरफ्तार किया, जिंदगी की शबे तारीख सहर कर न सका. The person who has conquered the universe, he has been miserably unable to conquer himself or look into the depth of himself. And when I say that, is it simple for the man to know who he is, what he is, and what's his relation towards the other? It is very simple, yet very difficult. And to this point, the poet says, बस के दुश्वार है हर काम का आसान होना, आदमी को भी मुयस्सर नहीं इंसान होना. आज अगर दुनिया का हर व्यक्ति सही मानों में इंसान बन जाए, आदमी तो हर कोई है, अगर वो इंसान बन जाए तो सारे के सारे मसाइल खत्म हो जाएंगे. लेकिन आदमी इंसान बन जाए, ये बहुत ही मुश्किल काम है. और ये वो इश्क है, ये वो लव है, ये वो मोहब्बत है, ये वो कठिन काम है जिसको शायर इस तरह से कहता है, ये इश्क नहीं आसान बस इतना समझ लीजिए, एक आग का दरिया है और डूब के जाना है. Well, turning to yoga and Islam, usually I talk on this topic in a trajectory of history and trajectory of theology and philosophy, and after that the trajectory of rituals. As regards the trajectory of philosophy and historical philosophy, when we are comparing between the Abrahamic faith and the Brahmanic culture, or the Brahmic culture, that is the Indus Valley culture, we find that here lies the Indian subcontinent. After that we have Persia, and when you cross from Persia over to Arabia, you'll be finding that great plateau, great continent or peninsula, that is Arabia. That was the birthplace of the Abrahamic faith. We know the basic difficulties in Abrahamic faith and Brahmic culture. That is summed up in the theistic and monotheistic culture and the non-monastic culture. But I find another trajectory that is simply sort of dialogue, historical dialogue between the Brahmanic culture and the Abrahamic culture. We know that the high days of Muslim culture in Arabia, that was the Abbasid period in 8th century AD. 8th century AD, that was the high days of translations from different cultures into Arabian culture. We find hundreds of books from different cultures, which were translated from different languages into Arabic, and that formed the very core of Muslim philosophy, including the theological philosophy or kalam, which is known as kalam in Islam. Most significant thing is that among the historical players we find the Chamberlains, the Abbasid Chamberlains, known as Al-Brahmika. Al-Brahmika was basically the Buddhists from Kashmir. They had migrated from that region to Bactria, that is in Afghanistan, during the high days of the Gupta period, as you know, Bamiyan temples and all that which you find in that region. That region before converted to Islam was the homeland of Buddhism, basically. So they were basically the Buddhists. They helped a lot in assimilating the Indian culture, Vedic culture, into the Arabic languages. So just to give you some examples, we find that Yoga Vasishtha, it was translated at that time from Sanskrit into Arabic. Patanjali's Yoga Sutra, it was translated. Different other, especially Siddhanta, the Surya Siddhanta, it was totally translated. Al-Biruni in his work, it is well known about Al-Biruni that he has spent a lot of time. So many years he had spent to learn, to master the Sanskrit language in Varanasi. And likewise Al-Hallaj, who is regarded as the person who has said Aham Brahmasmi in Arabic, of course, not in Sanskrit. That is An-al-Haq. An-al-Haq. It is simply the translation of Aham Brahmasmi. It is learned that he has spent some time in Varanasi. So there have been lots of interminglings between Indian culture, that is the Brahmic culture, with the Abrahamic culture, that is the Arabian culture. It is represented in so many things. It is represented especially in what is known as spiritual Islam. Because one has to, I personally demarcate clearly between what is known as ritualistic Islam or canonical Islam and what is known as spiritualistic Islam or the Sufi Islam. Sufi Islam, that is suluk, that is tariqat. We find that these seers of truth who banished all sorts of the dichotomy between subject and object, they vehemently pleaded for the universal love of the ultimate and universal love of the humankind. So in that phenomenon, in that perspective, we find that Aham Brahmasmi simply gets married to Vasudeva Kutumbakam. If I'm to use the Indian concept over there. So there are so many things which draws our attention in this regard. Well, मैं जिस मोहब्बतनामे का इंतज़ार कर रहा था वो आखिर पहुंच ही चुका है. मोहब्बतनामे मुझे बहुत पसंद हैं, एक से काम नहीं चलेगा, है ना? Anyway, मैं इसकी जो नज़ाकतें होती हैं इसको मैं समझता हूँ. So I think I'll be able to just sum it up in 2 minutes. Because there are so many technical aspects. I have dealt with the different aspects of yoga, Hatha yoga. What were the techniques of Hatha yoga used by the Sufis? Pranayama. What are the techniques of pranayama which have been absorbed by the Sufis? And Laya yoga, that's the Lataif, Kundalini yoga, chakra, all that. So the Sufis have elaborated all these things in their writings. We'll be just passing through some aspects over there, because if one is to embark upon elaborating all that, he will be needing hours and hours without coming to an end. Well, the first thing is that it is Islam, that is submission to God. Canonical Islam is represented by something that is known as Shariat. Shariat consists of the 5 pillars of Islam. The metaphysical and cosmological doctrine is La ilaha illallah Muhammadur Rasulullah, coupled by Salat, Saum, Zakat and Hajj. So this is the very summary of canonical Islam or Shariat. Spiritual Islam is represented by Tariqa, Tasawwuf or Suluk. This has to be summed up in devotion, love, Al-Hubb al-Ilahi, Al-Ishq al-Ilahi, that is divine love. According to the Sufis, all existences comes from God and God alone is real. The created God is but a reflection of the divine. The universe is the shadow of the absolute. Man is a mirror which, when polished, reflects God. The God of Sufi Islam is a God of love, and the way to him is through love. Whosoever knows God loves him. Whosoever knows the word turns away from him. If you wish to be free, become a prisoner of love. Then man, he has sprung from the intelligence which originated the universe, tends to the same. So there is the story of descent, and after descent you have the story of ascent. So when someone comes to this universe, it means that he has descended from his substance. एक रूह है, एक जौहर है जहां से वो नीचे आ गया है, अब उसको दोबारा ऊपर जाना है. This trajectory consists of several stages. The first stage is represented by worship. The second it is represented by love. The third is by seclusion. The fourth by knowledge. The fifth by ecstasy. The sixth by truth. And then the seventh is the union with God, or wasl, direct union with God. Further than he cannot go, but pursues his habit of self-denial and contemplation until his death, which is however merely looked upon as a total reabsorption into the deity. Elements of yoga in Islam are represented in so many aspects. The first is Bhut Shuddhi. If you analyze Muraqabah, which I have done in the paper, which will be available to the reader, inshallah, after it is printed, or it will be distributed. Muraqabah is represented by Bhut Shuddhi. Asanas. Among the asanas, now, the Shariat Islam or the ritualistic Islam that is represented by Salat, etc., it has its own prescribed rituals. But if we just confine ourselves to the yogic postures, we will finding that lotus posture in Qadariya and Sabiriya orders are represented. Lotus posture. Besides pranayama, in pranayama, pass and fast, that is breath regulation, in Quran or Hadith or in canonical Islam, we cannot figure out anything that is close to pranayama. But the Sufis has evolved this. All the Sufis, especially the Sufi or Qadariya, Chishtiya, Sabiriya orders. Pratyahara, which is known as Dabte Hawas, this is sensory control. So, pranayama, that is Paase Anfas, and Dabte Hawas, that is Pratyahara, these two basic elements are represented in Sufism. I have very elaborate information in that paper. Then again, Dharana and Dhyana and Samadhi and Chakra, that is Lataif. Well, these visuals are very common. They need not any explanation on part of any. The chakras, prana status, vibration and stillness of 6 chakras. That is the Kundalini. Kundalini arousal and symptoms and signs of Kundalini awakening. The point is that when we analyze the Sufi writings of the Qadiriya, Chishtiya and Sabariya orders, which I have done in the paper itself, we find that all these symptoms have been identified by the Sufi masters. Only the terms are different. Might be some differences over there. In the asanas, very famous asanas are over there. Some of these asanas are represented in particular types of rituals which have been done by the Sufi masters. And they are quite different from the usual rituals we find in canonical Islam. Lataif, that is very significant. Among the lataif in chest, that is, the Sufis have enumerated 5 lataif, that is qalb, ruh, sir, khafi and akhfa. We can identify these lataif, their signs, the color combination, the echo and all that with the Kundalini system we see in the Indian yogic philosophy. In the Naqshbandi Lataif we have this chart. It gives the location of Lataif, the color of Latifa, and the deity or the spiritual substance to which it is associated. Again, this is Lataif, it is represented like that. The 7 Lataif, that is Nafs, Ruh, Sir, Khafi and Akhfa. Again, Sitt Lataif, here it is it is shown in the body of a man itself. Here we're finding that just like as we have in the Indian philosophy, we start with the Mooladhara chakra up to the Sahasrara chakra. So the last one, that is this one, that is Nafs, and before that, this is known. That represents the Sahasrara chakra, starting from the first chakra, that is Mooladhara. Again, this shows several aspects. This has been depicted by certain Sufis in their writings. Now let us with the human body, within human body. This is another aspect of similarity between yoga and yogic discourse and Islam, because the Sufis have identified certain letters with the body, certain aspects of the human bodies and locations of human body. Chakra Nadi Mantra. There is the Lataif, chart of the Lataif. This Khafi Lataif, that is very significant, because this Khafi Akhfa Lataif, it represents the most subtle and sublime Latifa within human body, that is sort of the union with God. And this is represented in yoga by this figure. If we just see all them in parallel lines, we can find that Latifa Akhfa is like that, and this Samadhi is like that. Guru Shishya Parampara, this is another point of very significance with regard to yoga and Islam. The Shishya comes, he actually symbolizes darkness, and the Guru he symbolizes the light. Material effects of letters. So the effects are, all the letters, they do have the material aspects. It is represented by Tantra Yoga, partly it is represented by Tantra Yoga. So again, there are so many aspects of similarities. Man as macrocosm. So man is not simply something that is, when it is part of the substance, it is basically a macrocosm. It is depicted by certain Sufi sources like this. Even this diagram has been taken from these sources. Man and cosmos. So the entire cosmos lies within the body of man. When someone reaches this aspect, he becomes Ibn Arabi, and his heart is basically embodiment of universal love. He says in his couplet that my heart has disowned or de-recognized all the boundaries which we find in this world, which have been put forward by different denominations, religious or otherwise. Or Shah Hussain, what Shah Hussain will be saying, I am neither static nor kinetic, I am neither a Muslim nor a kafir. I am what I am. I was there in the beginning, I am the last, the present belongs to me, and the future I shall be. And it will be put on by Amir Khusro as Namidanam che manzil bood shab jai ke manbudam, bahar suraq se bismil bood shab jai ke manbudam. It will be represented by Sayyid Ali Hamdani as saying that, just a sort of paying tribute to the idol. He'll be saying that if the Brahmin peeps into my inner condition, he will turn me out of his sight. In that, he would not allow a wicked man like me to present myself before the idol. Just look how this beautiful couplet is presented in praise of idol. Thank you very much. बहुत बहुत शुक्रिया.